Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the stream. Stream. Just gotta do the clickety-click, clankety-clank. We do have a Duke supervising us today, so that's always good. Good morning, Rolanda. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, Postmatic Shadow. Hope you both are doing well. Okay, I think that is everything. Posted in all the places it needs to be posted. Fair enough, Rolando. Fair enough. Hope you're doing well. As well as can be. Alrighty, we got that in place. We got that in place. And we got that in place. Excuse me. Good morning, Kandaria. Hope you're doing well. Oh, bubbles are attacking. Grumpy dog. What? New. That was very random. Somehow a video got into my playlist of background music. Confused the ever-living crap out of me. Good morning, Anthony. Hope you're doing well. Huge dinosaur? Same to you. Good morning, Asane. Hope you're doing well. Huh. Awesome. Huge dinosaur. And what might that game be? Keep flashbanging myself. Morning, Shadow. Morning. Helldivers 2. Awesome. Only reason why I didn't play it is because it's got kernel level anti-cheat. So, on principle, I refuse to play any game with kernel level anti-cheat. Which means most AAA titles, so not a lot lost there. Ooh, big yawn. The dog snoring on my lap is not helping. I'm not, I refuse to give anything kernel level access except my operating system. Any system can be hacked, full stop. It's just a matter of time. And if a kernel level anti-cheat ever goes haywire, it'll destroy your entire computer. Or can, should I say. Not a would, it can. So I'd rather not have that. Not to mention there are the performance hits. And the fact that it doesn't really work. So they're asking for a lot of access onto my PC. Theoretically access to everything on my PC. And I get nothing of value in return. On PS5 it doesn't, as far as I understand. It uses a different system. So consoles use different systems to computers. So yeah, kernel level access means it's got the same access as my operating system. Or as the operating system. Which is way too much access. Basically, Anthony, basically. They claim it's the best anti-cheat, and yet there are many other forms of anti-cheat that work just as well, without having to give them kernel level access. That's the best, Shadow. Limiting where you can. I personally just run a debloat script on Windows 11. Look, it looks very fun. I was very tempted. There is a way to do it for a streamer, or actually for anybody. It is an expensive way of doing it. So, the expensive way of doing it... I should turn the music down. So you have a computer that has a blank slate. Psh. Nothing installed on it except for the operating system and the game you want to play. And then you export the video to a second computer. That's your main computer, so that has all your files and all your stuff. So the only access that the second computer has to your computer is a screen. However, that does mean you need two computers. Which sucks. That's the way a lot of streamers do it.
Ah, it's raining subscriptions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for the subscriptions. Very much appreciated. The tier 1 sub. Thank you very much for the gifted sub, Postmatic. Should have been going. That's normally the way I sound when my legs go to sleep and I've got pins and needles. Yeah, basically. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, yeah. It's way too much access for what it does for you. In theory, it can access anything on your computer your operating system can. In theory. Now, if that was compromised and malware was put into it, you would never know. So it could get your keystrokes, it could get everything. Everything. And I just don't trust games companies that much. I trust them to give me a game. That's what I trust them for. I don't trust them for security. You want to say hello to everybody? You're awake. Okay. Oh, okay. Say hello. Oh. And you want to talk to them? What do you want to say? Blick. Blick, blick. Blick, blick. He doesn't want to talk. He's shy. Shy. Shy puppy. Anyway, back to sleep. This camera amazes me. I am sitting center frame on the camera. Okay, it is. About to say, I'm sitting center frame on the camera, but I seem to have shifted left in the stream. Who knows? Who knows? So, you came for narration, so you learned some computer stuff. From a different lifetime. Well, it's not any blizzard, but yeah. I mean, there is so much that can go wrong with that, and in just the thought of requiring that level of access and it doesn't actually do anything. I have no idea, Natalie. The only thing I can say is keep clicking the three little buttons and saying ignore channel. But that's the only way, because that's what I do. Ooh, excuse me. There are hundreds at this point of the AI slop, especially well, in any genre they can fit into, really. The dog was happily sawing wood. I really do wish I could fall asleep that quickly. Not like he spent the whole night sleeping. Yeah, very few left. I mean, I think there are some big YouTubers in the horror community that are trying to sneak in AI content into their channels. Yeah. Fair enough, fair enough. Look, I get it. It's an arms race between cheaters and anti-cheat. But at some point, you got to put your foot down about privacy. And just go, okay, I'm not going to play your game. It's fine. I wasn't planning on cheating, but I'm not going to give you access. So it's all good. Oh my goodness. You'd swear that I was streaming late at night or not sleeping. Well, the not sleeping thing is true, but that's always true. Fair enough. That sounds funny. That's true, Natalie. That's true. But also, I mostly play single-player games these days, so anti-cheat doesn't really worry me. Although there are some single-player games that do have anti-cheat, or have permanently online bullshit, which I hate. Drives me up the wall. If I want a single-player game, I should be able to play it by myself without connecting to a server. But that is far from the point. We're going to head into Billy Bob. Number 10. Dicks. It's a Dicks joke. Oh, what's the stuff you wanting, that is? Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read Fuss, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob Space Trucker and is part of a series. There is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Good morning, Yamashisha. Hope you're doing well. Special Agent Muller presented his ID to Sergeant Tavish of the Galactic Police. The Greslin looked it over, scanning it in his computer before handing it back. Being aquatic creatures, the Greslin had to wear exosuits to survive the standard atmospheric conditions that were present across that were standard across the galaxy. Thus their culture had very strong sense of moral codes and justice. This made them natural cops, since their exosuits could simply be upgraded for police work, and they really had a good ethical standing. Even so, Muller didn't like them very much. They were too strict in their code, and often followed the law by rote instead of by intention. Even so, they were well-meaning, so he figured there would be worse cops out there. They were well-meaning, so he figured there could be worse cops out there. You'll have to excuse me if it's a...
You will have to excuse me if I have a lot of questions, Agent Muller, came his robotic voice from the suit. It's not a very usual case around here to get mixed up in interspecies affairs. Muller took his ID back and tucked it into his breast pocket of his black suit.
That's all right. That's all right. Since I represent the United Human Government, which isn't a member nation of the Galactic Government yet, I'm well versed in explaining such things.
Sergeant Tavish's exosuit broadcast a sign intending for non-verbal understanding. Ben stood up. But you are
French, as far as I know.
But you are allowed limited access to our police network, it seems.
Yes, but only in regards to capturing wayward humans the Galactic Government wants us to bring to justice. It's understood that non-human justice for a human, especially an American, would lead to a war between our species and many others. So the easiest thing to do is to get one of our own to bring them in. The sergeant sent out another noise of nonverbal. The sergeant sent out another one of those nonverbal signs.
I don't understand how you got here so fast, however. I only sent out the station broadcast a few days... I only sent out the station broadcast a few sleep cycles ago.
Yes, our active cycles are much longer. We can travel up to 4 standard sleep cycles before needing a rest. We can travel up to 4 standard sleep cycles before needing to rest.
The sergeant's exosuit remained quiet at this information, mightily surprised. Muller took advantage of the quiet to pull up his notepad out of his jacket and click his pen in preparation for writing. Before he could scribble anything down, however, Tavish pointed at the notepad and pen. What are those?
This is an implement. This is a writing implement. It leaves a trail of ink behind when I press it to this form of compressed plant matter.
You use something so primitive, so... Why not a standard data state and stylus?
Cultural tradition, Muller said, even though the real reason was because no one could spy on these notes if they were written down instead of stored on a data slate. Now then, could you please explain to me what happened?
Well, as I stated into the transmission, the criminal,
the suspect,
what? We have footage of him doing it. He's a criminal.
To humans, someone is innocent until proven guilty by a panel of their peers.
What? But
how was that clicking? Good morning, Anatoly. Hope you're doing well.
What? But people can be biased. You don't use computer algorithms like the rest of the galaxy.
No.
What a strange, backwards, and barbaric culture.
Sergeant, your mic is still on.
I am aware. I wasn't intending to keeping that comment private.
But did have to respect the honesty of the Greslins. Even so, the person in question did what?
Right. He was entering the station with I'm searching for the appropriate word, a potential terrorist recruiter. They were moving through a crowd when the suspect angered a squad of Phyllis Rangers. They activated their battle ball and began a ritual of insult. He then caught their ball. He then caught their battle ball, turned one of your people's songs. He then caught the battle ball, turned one of your people's songs, if you can call it that, and then apparently beat them at their own ritual. Taking great offense, they found him later and challenged him to combat in a civilian eating establishment. He then caused great damage to the establishment and the galactic soldiers. Muller wrote this down and seemed a little surprised by the information.
So, He defended himself. Are they seeking damages he caused in the fight?
What? Well, no, the government paid the damages already. We're seeking him for being spotted with a known terrorist and assaulting a squad of Galactic Special Forces.
But they challenged him, and you said that he was a potential terrorist.
But he wasn't... but he...
What is that clicking? Are you clicking? No. Okay. Terrorist.
Well, he wasn't supposed to have fought back, and she's a terrorist, just potentially a recruiter too, is what I meant.
Muller slowly nodded as he kept writing. And his info? Tavish looked at the data slate spread across his desk before picking one up. Tavish looked at the data slates spread across his desk before picking one. Tavish looked at the data slate spread across his desk before picking one.
From the docking listing, he was known as
Vizkit Kuznez Cargo Hauler. Vizkit. Echo. Vizkit Kuznez Cargo Hauler. There was a pause as Muller looked back up. What? That's not a human name.
It's not? Hold on.
Tavish put the data slate down and picked up another one.
Oh, here it is, sorry. He is known as
Billy Bob, Space Striker. Billy Bob, Space Striker. Billy Bob hadn't thought he'd be so lucky. Apparently, most bars kept 100% ethanol. Apparently, most bars kept 100% alcohol and would just water it way down with various other liquids depending on what drink was wanted by what species. Not only did this make sure that they'd have plenty to drink later, but it was perfect for a Molotov cocktails. Emily seemed less sure.
A potent incendiary, clearly, but
Greetings, lady. Greetings. Stop shouting at me.
But it'll drop off people. But it'll just drop off people.
Oh. Greetings. Once what the sugar is for. He was dumping sugar into the bottles he'd filled with alcohol. The heat melts the sugar and it makes it sticky.
Is that true?
To be honest, I don't have a fucking clue. But I think I read it once, so I'm going to try it out.
Even so, how do you plan on getting it to them?
I'm going to throw it.
There's no way. They're 75 yards away.
Yeah, it's close. Yeah, it's close to a throw from an outfield to home plate. I did that back in community college. I wasn't good enough to go pro, but if I'd been smart enough to get into an actual college, I'm sure I'd made it their team too.
What? I don't understand.
Never mind. I just need you to be a distraction.
What? They'll kill me. They'll kill me. I'm not as hardy as you.
You can fly, just super bump. You can fly. You can fly. Just swoop around above them, and then get out of there after I throw the burst bottle.
But I'm a diplomat, not a soldier. I've only undergone basic espionage training.
Well, I'm a pilot. I only underwent basic training for ground combat. He paused for a moment. Why is a diplomat trained in basic espionage?
Isn't diplomacy filled with intrigue on your planet?
No, well, not anymore. Okay, good point.
He collected an armful of bottles as she backed up from him. He stepped outside the bar as he heard Rock Lobster playing on the PA. That was slightly confusing the crap out of the Xenos. He looked back at Emily as she stood behind him. He could tell that she was nervous, so he set the bottles down and then set a hand on her shoulder.
Look, Emily, you can do this. Those targeting computers take a few seconds to track me, and I'm not flying. Just scare them and get out. It'll be fine. Promise.
He watched the Space Eagle hesitate, then nod. She turned away from him.
Wait.
She turned back.
Let the song end.
She paused and waited until Rock Lobster finally ended. He nodded, and she began running before jumping up and letting her wings snap out from the folds of her cloak, then took flight as she grinned.
America! Fuck yeah!
He whispered at the sight of the flying space bald eagle. She swooped down the street like a hallway. She swooped down the street like a hallway and turned back. She built up speed and rounded the corner as he heard the Borks cry out, then quickly scrolled down his implant as he let the rag at each shaft. She built up speed and rounded the corner as he heard the Borks cry out, then quickly scrolled down his implant as he let the rag he'd shifted. Then quickly scrolled down his implant as he let the rag he'd stuffed into the top of the bottle. As he rounded the corner, the Borks were aiming up, trying to get a bead on Emily. He reached back and chucked the bottle as hard as he could towards the mech on the left, then grabbed the next bottle, tossing it before the first landed. Just as the bottle smashed into the mech and exploded in a ball of fire, the singing started. Burn, baby, burn! Burn, baby, burn. The mech on the right fired a stream of bolts at Emily, who cried out and swooped away past Billy Bob. The second bottle fell a bit short, coating the Borks in front of the mech. As they screamed, the first mech was stumbling, the ammo inside cooking off as it began to explode. He chuckled. He chucked the third bottle towards the center group, as the Borks were in utter chaos. Then hurled. He chucked the third bottle towards the center group, as the Borks were in utter chaos. Then he turned, looking for Emily. Up-doot-de-doot. She had come to a stop down the street, red blood smeared along the ground behind her. He cursed and quickly ran to her. She was sprawled out on the ground, a nasty gash along her outer thigh. She was groaning as she clutched it, and Billy Bob frowned, but then quickly grabbed a bottle and ran to her. He smiled as he crouched next to her. Hey, you did great. I nailed the feckers. Don't worry about this. It's nothing serious. He pulled a small pack from his vest and pulled out the rag from the bottle he'd brought. He poured some of the alcohol on the gash as she cried out. Then he pulled out a small tube as he pulled the cap off and began to smear gel along her wound. Oh, you have good biochemical. Oh, good, you have biochemical gel. I didn't think you would. It's just for militaries, after all.
I don't. Sounds cool, though. This is industrial glue. She tensed. What? Don't worry. It's perfectly safe. I think it's safe for humans. Billy Bob, I won't let you die. He wrapped the now glued gash up with a bandage from his pack and then picked her up. He had no idea that she'd be so light. Even considering the gravity, she felt incredibly easy to pick up. Then again, she could fly, so he shrugged.
Carrying her back into the bar, he set her down within reach of more alcohol and some fruit drinks. Then he gave her one of his knives.
"I'll be back,"
he said with a smile, patting her shoulder before he ran back outside. He picked up his shotgun and his bat before moving on. Taking another glance around the corner, the Borks were gone. Either they were all burned to a crisp in the flames or had run off. He wasn't sure, but he knew he didn't care. One mech had exploded, and the other had opened the latch and looked empty as the flames began to lap at its feet. He could hear sirens as the station's fire alarms began to go off. The Dragon's Breath rounds he'd used earlier hadn't been enough to get hadn't been enough to get going, but the fire of 3 Molotovs seemed to draw attention. He began to run faster before jumping over one of the puddles of flame near the edge. Once he was past, he stepped up to the big security panel next to the door. Once he was past, he stepped up to the big security panel next to the door the final box had been guarding. Emily had made sure that he'd still have access, and as he hit the right button, the door started to slide open. He smiled.
"Just you and me now, clown."
He hit the button on the elevator inside and looked around as it began to grind up towards his destination.
Wait, what song did he want to play?
He cursed at his lack of planning and began to scroll through his playlist. Maybe, no.
Yes, perfect.
The song began to play as the elevator neared the top. As he stepped out of the wide open throne room command center. As he stepped out the wide open throne room command center he'd seen earlier, had been transformed. Now he was standing in a maze like a set of corridors. As he stepped out the wide open throne room command center he'd seen earlier had been transformed. As he stepped out into the wide open throne room the wide open throne room command center he'd seen earlier had been transformed. Now he was standing in a maze-like set of corridors. He smiled then as he began to walk while Jim Morrison, the Lizard King, began to play. This is the end, beautiful friend. There were footsteps moving away from him as he walked through the corridors. His shotgun was slung at his side in easy reach, and he held his bat over his shoulder, letting it drag across the walls. Every so often a gap would make the scraping pause before the quiet song was interrupted by a clunk. Before the song was interrupted with a clunk. On he walked until at the junction a Bork jumped out at him with some sort of hand axe. Billy Bob quickly jumped back and swung his bat. Crack! A horn snapped off as its head jerked, and it fell to the ground, maybe dead, maybe not. Good morning, Muskup and Cheesy Iron and Chin. Hope you're all doing well. Sure, Chin. Ask away. I'll answer it if I can. Maybe not. Billy Bob stepped over the body and went down the side it had come from. Billy Bob stepped over the body and went down the side it had come from. He'd walked another few minutes and then found the rows of consoles he'd seen before. The space goblins had run off, it seemed. A few of them were dead near the far door, but most escaped, it seemed. He saw a Bork near the door at the back, raising his weapon as Billy Bob. He saw possibly, Jen, possibly. The problem with the video narration videos is it takes 3 or 4 times the amount of work to produce. So it's a significant step up in the amount of work that we would have to produce. I might do it for a stream instead, but it won't be in a video again. I don't think I would be appearing in videos. But you never know what the future holds. But most is... Are you done? Dog snoring quite loudly. But most escaped, it seemed. A few of them were dead near the far door. But most escaped. It seemed. He saw Bork near the door at the back, raising his weapon at Billy Bob. Billy Bob was faster, snapping his handgun up and firing around. It just grazed the creature, but with the 45 that counted, it spun around and slammed into the wall behind it, and failing. It spun around, slamming into the wall behind it, and falling to the ground unconscious. Billy Bob stopped. Billy Bob stepped in front of the door as he heard Jim sing. Then he came to a door, and he looked inside. Good idea, Jim. He opened the door, then pulled his shotgun up. There was the main throne room. The space clown was sitting on it, dead, Bork around his feet. Billy Bob growled as he heard that awful voice once more. They failed. Billy Bob growled. The space clown was sitting on it, dead Borks around his feet. Billy Bob growled as he heard that awful voice once more. They failed me, and my God, I shall not. But I shall not. You will be a most amazing tribute. I shall be showered with praise. He tilted his head up at that, raising all of his arms to the ceiling. Then, lowering his arms, he looked at Billy Bob. Will you honor me by fighting hand to hand? Billy Bob looked around at the Bork corpses. They had slash marks around their throats and backs. Looking back at the space clown, Billy Bob sneered. Only if you get close enough. Raising his handgun, he fired. Raising his handgun, he fired, but the space clown sneered and shifted to the side. Billy Bob cursed as he realized why the thing had smelled like gas earlier. That fat ass gut was filled with the stuff. It seemed to utilize some sort of release valves in his body to boost left and right as Billy Bob tried to nail the fecker. When his slide rack back, magazine empty, he quickly ejected it. But as the magazine fell and he tried to slam a new one home, the space clown dashed forward. Those 4 arms reaching up, the fingers having extended jagged claws. Billy Bob couldn't reload and jump to the side at the same time fast enough, and cried out as he felt some cuts along his right arm as he moved aside. Rolling away, he jumped back up, firing off another set of rounds at the space clown. He was laughing maniacally as it kept... It was laughing maniacally as kept dodging his bullets. It was laughing maniacally and kept dodging his bullets. But this time, when Billy Bob had to eject the magazine and it rushed forward, he used one hand to grab his shotgun on the sling and fire it point blank from his hip. The space clown's 3 eyes bulged in surprise as the buckshot slammed into him. But he just flew backwards, bouncing around like a beach ball as Billy Bob cursed. Seemed like the fecker had the better shield than the Borks. It howled out in annoyance as it finally stopped bouncing around the room. Laid out on its back, it kicked those feet. Laid out. Comic Con is a international event. Just have to check the country. I mean, we had it in South Africa, so I'm pretty sure it's most places in the world. It was originally US. But now they... it's a... what do you call it? Franchise. Bouncing around the room. Bouncing around the room. Laid out on its back, it kicked those fat feet in the air to roll over and hop back up. Billy Bob had reloaded and began to fire off another series of rounds. But he had to fire it one-handed, as the right side was killing him, the pain from the cuts burning deep. When he ejected the round this time, though, he fumbled his gun and it began to fall from his hand. The space clown howled in glee and charged forward again. But as it swung out a clawed hand, Billy Bob dove forward into it. He grasped it. He gasped as he felt those claws slash along his stomach and ribs, but more importantly, he pulled his knife free, jamming it into that fat feck's gas sack. The space clown's eyes went wide as Billy Bob pulled the knife free. There was a loud hiss as it began to fly back. Billy Bob coughed at the rancid smell as the space clown seemed to deflate, flying through the air before landing at the base of the throne. It was skinny as a rail now, gasping as it tried to pull itself up. Billy Bob was clutching his side as he stepped closer. Jim Morrison nearing the end of the song in the background as the space clown gasped, holding up 2 hands. Wait! Then Billy Bob lifted his steel-toed boot up. No! And brought it down with all the force he could possibly manage as a super heavy gravity No! And brought it down with all the force he could possibly manage as a super heavy gravity death wielder. And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Coffee is finished, puppy. Puppy, go make me another cup. Puppy? No, puppy's sleeping. Not very good at making coffee either. We'll just drink some dishwashing liquid.
I would love to go to one of the Japanese Comic Cons. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. I've been to a couple of the South African ones. Fair enough, Kira. Fair enough. I think the average age of everybody in Japan is higher than any other country. I would love to go to some of the Magic the Gathering conventions. They don't really have those in South Africa. It'd be interesting. Pretty sure that Japan is worse than that. Good morning, Joseph. Hope you're doing well. Currently, the average age in Japan is 46.5 years old. Yes. Well, I'm not a Warhammer player, but I am a Magic player, so I understand, especially with the way Hasbro is milking Magic players. Unfortunately, most of my cards are still in South Africa. So is my suit, by the way. But that'll all eventually move over here. Since being in Portugal, I think I've only bought 2 Magic products, which is I bought 2 precons, commander precons, because the wife was interested in playing. But other than that, nothing. I play on Arena and MTGO sometimes. Although I prefer Commander. Really, my dog? I mean, I started in 1995, but I stopped for a very, very long time. But yes, since I started playing again, Magic the Gathering, so that's 2 years, two and a bit years now. The price of your average product is doubled, if not more. Background music. There we go. Should be able to hear the background music now. Yeah. I don't know where it's going. Look, I'm looking very much forward to the science fiction set that's coming out, but I also agree that it's not really Magic the Gathering. I used to be. Well, in my teens, I got into it. I was like fanatical about it. But that was before the internet and stuff, so. Well, the fact that they're releasing 7 to 8 new sets a year, that's ridiculous. We won't go into that. That is a rant for another time, I think. Yeah. Well, it's not really a set. It's a kind of set. It's 4 precons. 4 Magic the Gathering precons. No, I prefer old art. All day. Every day. Yeah. Give me money, Patreon, so I can afford my addiction to MGG, please. Yeah. Look, having started playing in the 90s and now, the new player experience is just non-existent. You know, well, I mean, Spider-Man's going to be standard legal. That's awesome. All the Universes Beyond sets are standard legal. Going to be fantastic. Well, they still do release lore online, but apparently it doesn't make much sense. Each set has its own, like, lore. And they do release it, but from what I've heard, it makes no sense to itself and to other sets. Alrighty. Ooh, yawn. Let's move on to the next chapter. Feel free to argue about Magic the Gathering and Warhammer in the chat. Engagement always helps. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest video. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition. Oh yeah, they had plenty of books, tons of books, back in the day. I think I've still got some somewhere. The original ones. Very much, Muskup, very much. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob Space Trucker, and is part of a series. If you are new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Cast leader Cleroy was shifting through reports when juvenile Gresh clicked his forelimbs upon the entrance surface to ask permission to enter. Cleroy stomped his hind limbs and indicate. Cleroy stomped his hind limbs to indicate permission. The juvenile quickly stepped in with the data state in his hand, which he handed to Cleroy.
Cast leader, there is a situation. I think our surveillance equipment on Black Market Station 32 has been compromised.
Cleroy nodded as this was said and set the report down before reading it. Ah, yes, the station is Vakesh assaulted. Has traffic resumed so that we could move in and retrieve the recordings? Where were they gone?
No, Cast leader, it appears to be functioning, but I suspect that they've been broadcasting a clever ruse to make us worried without need. An attempt to get inside our antennae, as it were.
Cast leader Cleroy laid his mandibles inch higher than usual to indicate curiosity. What makes you say this?
It is very elaborate recording, no doubt, but it is simply too absurd for any true grey shells to believe.
Yes, but what is on that will make you say this?
Perhaps it is best that you watch it yourself, Cast leader.
Cleroy picked up the data slate and skittered around the desk. With Gresh in the lead, they skittered down to the main surveillance monitoring room, where most of the juveniles were clustered around a console. Cleroy clicked his forelimbs together, and they quickly dispersed back to their own consoles.
Vakesh assault.
I love Kraken packs. It's expensive, but I love it. The Vakesh assault is nothing we haven't seen before, he chided the juveniles, who were quietly talking amongst themselves instead of listening to him, which was unusual. He leaned in, settling in on his hind limbs before the console. Gresh quickly found the monitor he wanted Cleroy to watch.
I've pieced together what the others think happened, but you'll see they're wrong when you watch it.
Cleroy saw that barbaric ship that he had spoken to Bleebob about, and noticed the compact, ugly creature that emerged. Then his mandibles ticked in anger as he noticed the diplomat of their ancestral eminence. Then his mandibles ticked in anger as he noticed the diplomat of their ancestral enemies emerge as well. Then there was this one Bleebob. Then this was the one Bleebob wanted. He saw it approach a squad of Vakesh and settle back in. Most likely they killed what the ugly thing... Most likely they killed that ugly thing, then Bleebob. Most likely they killed that ugly thing then, and Bleebob had nothing to worry about. Then his four eyes widened as he watched that single creature knock down the Vakesh squad. This wasn't possible. Gresh started to talk about Cleroy. Gresh started to talk, but Cleroy let his clickers signal for silence in the room. The other juveniles went quiet as Cleroy watched the entirety of the spy video without stopping.
He even forgot to let his hydration mucus flow from his fluid sacs, so his shell wouldn't dry and crack until the very end. He quickly collected himself, remembering to release more mucus, and he skittered out of the room, ignoring the juvenile's questions. He didn't even remember to take the data state which outlined how old the video was. He didn't even remember to take the data slate, which outlined how old the video feed was. Leroy rushed into his office, locking the entrance behind him before knocking the data slates off his desk. He keyed into the console with haste and inputted the species code of the ugly little thing that Bleebob had been hunting. His eyes began to scan over the documents that were only available to Galactic's Secret Service. Majority of species seems to be suitable for integration under unified galactic government. Possible warlike subspecies have shown aptitude for unusual naval warfare. Note, original contact plan of species requesting help from Trzek's invasion backfired. Trzek's now extinct after prolonged naval bombardments of home systems through unconventional means. Species spared retribution genocide after agents discovered clear lack of knowledge of Texas customs and logistics. Species presumed threat to be far greater than true. Lack of intelligence gathered on part of Secret Service regarding species' reaction to Texas invasion is the greatest factor. Lack of be far greater than true. Species Species presumed threat to be far greater than true. Lack of intelligence gathering on part of the Secret Service regarding species' reaction to Texas invasion is the greatest factor in possible Texas extinction. After being alerted to greater galactic presence, species has been mostly peaceful. Subspecies continues border skirmishes, to be expected as codes of To be expected as codes of uniformity begin to eliminate extreme populations. Naval focus indicates likelihood of poor ground combat ability. Species only has access to very low-tech energy weapons. Ships of barbaric design, aside from single unknown innovation known as skip drives. That has been flagged by Central Intelligence as forbidden tech. Overall threat level, low. Leroy blinked as he looked at the last line. Overall threat level, low. Overall threat level, low. His limbs clicked on the console hastily. Central Intelligence has theorized no observation of species in ground combat is required, considering naval focus. No close combat studies of species have been conducted. Leroy's mucus turned pale green as he realized the grave mistake they'd made. Quickly, he activated his communicator and tapped it into the feed with Bleebob's cast. This is Class Leader Leroy. This is Cast Leader Leroy. Inform your cast leader that we found him, and I have every intention of assisting his cast in tracking and killing this target. The juvenile on the line clicked in confusion. Who do you refer to, cast leader? Leroy stared at the information in front of him. We must stop Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Billy Bob had his arms crossed as he looked down at the space goblin doctor, who was glaring up at him. After curb-stomping that fecking space clown, he'd freed the prisoners and tried to help get things on the station back to normal. After gluing his wound shut, of course.
Look, I'm still maintain that there's nothing wrong with using some glue to close up a wound.
It's madness. I don't care if everyone else is impressed with how well it works. You risk toxic contamination and worst. You must drink biogel.
Billy Bob eyed the purple space cough syrup that had been brought in a big picture. I don't wanna.
Oh, you an infant. It'll make you better.
They stopped as the door to the medical room opened and Emily limped in.
Hello, Billy Bob. Hello, Dr. Goldsmith. How's the patient, Doctor? His name is Dr.
Goldsmith, Billy Bob said incredulously. The other two looked back at him.
Yes. Is there something wrong?
Billy Bob looked from Goldsmith to Emily and back. All sorts of thoughts flooded through his mind about the unlikely names some aliens had, and wondered if his translator was broken, or perhaps just fucking with him. Should he try to explain to... No, he shouldn't. He just took... So he just shook his head. No, never mind, nothing. Dr. Goldsmith huffed out.
I was trying to explain to this stubborn child that he needs to drink the biogel. I don't care if he can't ingest much liquid or not. The more he can manage to drink, the quicker he'll heal.
Emily looked over at Billy Bob.
Billy Bob, drink the biogel, but
Reading.
Drink the biogel, but drink it. You need it. Glue won't stop your wounds from getting infected, and you'll heal faster. The nanites will adapt to your physiology and speed up your healing greatly. Look at my leg. She rolled up the leg of her new pants to show him the gash she had from earlier. Her downy feathers parting to show a long white scar, but it looked old and certainly fresh. But it looked old and certainly not fresh. Billy Bob sighed. Do I have to? Yes, drink it,
she ordered. Billy Bob groaned and picked up the pitcher. Then before Emily or Dr. Goldsmith could stop him to point out the small cup they'd provided, he began to drink from the pitcher straight. They stared in shock as he gulped and gulped and gulped. He didn't stop until the pitcher was completely empty, and he slammed back onto the table with a loud belch. Ugh, why does medicine have to taste like space grape? Nothing's different, I swear.
That was a whole liter. How did you manage to drink all of that?
What? I just drank, I don't know. Hey, if I need to get out of the way, I will. Hey, if I need to get it out of the way, I will. Give me a few more liters and I'll finish them before tonight.
The space goblin was dumbfounded. How are you so dense?
Hey, that's not very nice. I didn't think what I said was stupid.
No, not dense. Dense.
I don't... Wait. You mean like thick? I mean, my belly isn't that big. He shook his beer gut, which was a bit smaller with all the activity he'd been doing lately.
No, your literal density. I need to study you.
Billy Bob had stopped listening, though, as he felt his body start to feel a little warm. Then he began to feel good, not just good, great. Whew, the stuff's starting to kick in. Whew. He began to move around in place and then started to wiggle a little. He felt like he had tons of energy. His body felt better than ever. His wounds began to close up as his incredibly dense body made the work of the nanites much easier. He was full of biological materials. They could move around without damaging the rest of him. He started to move a bit more, then it suddenly shouted, "Thriller!" and started to dance. Emily and the doctor backed up, unsure what was going on.
Is this normal, Doctor?
Oh.
Is this normal, Doctor? Is this normal, Doctor? She asked. I have no idea. Biogel is supposed to adapt to the host. Once they run out of the safe levels of materials they use, they self-terminate harmlessly. He might be so dense they're running in overdrive. I have no idea what will happen. I have no idea what they will do.
Woo! Billy Bob stopped dancing and laughed, pushing past them as he ran out into the medical bay on the station.
We better follow him,
Emily said as the doctor nodded, and they rushed after the hyped-up space trucker, who was rushing into the black market now that it was once more teeming with life. The other species had grasped the dash. Natalie, just give me a second. I'm not that technologically advanced that I have a bot. Really?
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen.
Shush. Does that work? I don't think that works. No, that doesn't work. And there we go. There it is. All right. My pleasure.
once more teeming with life.
The other species had to gasp and dash out of his way as he moved, but they recognized him as their savior, and no one seemed to mind. He didn't know what he wanted to do, but he felt so good, and he had so much energy. Then he stopped in front of some sort of market with a cook making something. Then he leaned up against the glass with his eyes widened. "That's beef!" Inside, the space goblin wearing a headset and appeared to be a cook.
"Oh, you're the human, yes. We just recently imported some meat from your planet. Your wonderful omnivores, simply wonderful. I believe this is what you call beef, yes. But you're the one who saved us. Let me get you something special."
The space goblin tapped on the control panel, and Billy Bob watched robotic arms retreat into the ceiling. Then he gasped as they descended once more, but this time carrying something else. "That's... no, is it?"
"It's what your species refer to as Kobe beef."
Billy Bob's eyes went wide. Billy Bob's eyes went even wider. "First, I'm going to cut into small steaks."
First, I'm going to cut it into small steaks, rub a bit of what you call herbs and spices onto it. but nothing with capsaicin. Sheer madness amongst your species. Billy Bob began to drool a little as he watched. We have some of what you call butter, which we're going to rub on top of it as well. Billy Bob was firmly pressed against the glass. And then boil it in this big pot of water until it's nice and well done. No! Billy Bob screamed out and pulled his head back, slamming it into the glass. The creatures around him and the cook gasped and cried out in fear as Billy Bob smashed the glass with his face. He hopped inside to the now open shop and snatched the Kobe beef from the cook's hand. That's not how you do it! He looked around and grabbed a pan, dumped some butter in it, and quickly cranked the burner up. It seemed like the Xenos were better at making cockpot. It seemed like the Xenos were better at making cooktops, because their pot was glowing hot as soon as he tossed it on. The butter was sizzling and popping as he seared the steak just 20 seconds aside, before turning the burner off and dumping the steak onto a plate. That's how it's done. The cook cowered before him. But it's still raw at the center. Betty Bob's eyes gleamed then. Exactly. He felt so good he didn't even mind that his fingers burned a little as he picked up the steak and firmly bit part of it off. The taste. Oh, sweet baby Jesus, the taste. He shivered and twitched a little as he chewed and then swallowed, turning, he saw the stunned crowd outside. Dr. Goldsmith was gasping, and Emily had her face pressed firmly into her palm. Billy Bob just waved, Emily, they got steak! And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker. I'm going to twitch my eye. Very annoying. I shall be right back. I'll leave you with music and chair.
Alrighty, back. Oh, there we go. Nice clickety clack in the neck. Alrighty, on to the next chapter. Dogue has wandered off, which is fair enough. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read HFY, where I take old stories I've narrated and update into modern new people. Modern new people. What the hell am I saying? Much people in the Discord. Good morning, Cheesing Iron. I said that before. But it's still same greeting, same enthusiasm. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read HFY, where I take old stories I've narrated and update into modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob's Space Trucker and is part of a series. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. 16 seconds. Every time. Chapter 12. President Cross was sitting in a small conference room in the dodecahedron with several other dignitaries and military personnel as they began to lay out what they knew regarding the situation. Butch Cross had traded his official Butch Cross had traded out his official flag cloak and eagle standard from his press conference with the more casual suit that he'd ripped his arms off himself. He leaned forward, hands clasped in front of him, as he listened to the presentation. The situation had been moving ahead over the past day, as the first time since the Unification Crusade, America was thinking about accepting an alliance with a foreign power. So, this species is known as the Libertonians, which is a good name on its own. Looks like space eagles. The intel officer nodded. That is correct, sir.
As you can see from the pictures here, they do have forearms and some sort of flexible insect wing-like webbing between them to assist in flying. But overall, they do look like space eagles. There was murmurs of approval from around the table. And their current president is named Abe, as in Abraham, like Abraham Lincoln. The intel officer nodded once more. That is correct, sir. However, his name... However, his last name is Sharptalon. However, his last name is Sharptalon. Abraham Sharptalon. President Butch Abraham Sharptalon. President Butch Crusher Cross repeated the name with a nod as he looked around the table. I think we could form an alliance with an Abraham Sharptalon. Do they have videos of him hunting or something to help the citizens get excited about the first batch of awesome Xenos that we've met and all that? No, sir, but I'll pass on word. The thing is, they're in a bit of a tricky diplomatic situation. Cross waved a hand dismissively. They're tall, freedom-loving space eagles. They're tall, eagle-loving space eagles. I don't give a crap about the rest of the galaxy hates them. We're going to befriend them. That's just it, sir. The rest of the galaxy does sort of hate them. And why is that? They started some war around the formation of the galactic government a few centuries back. I think, they wanted more freedom in policy decisions. I think it's hard trying to find information, since most of the galaxy thinks that we're a subspecies of the H. It's hard to find information, since most of the galaxy thinks that we're a subspecies of the UHG. Cross waved a hand at that once more. Beckett, sounds like my kind of Xenos. For once, I don't see why we shouldn't forge ahead with this. Look, Mr. President, you don't have the authority to do that all on your own. I say that we make them some... Look, Mr. President, you don't have the authority to do that all on your own. I say we make them come here and live a week in Australia to test their mettle. Cross rolled his eyes at Governor Dundee. Ned, you recommend that with all Xenos we talk about. The gravity alone would crush most of them. Look, just because the UHG didn't want your land of nopes, we decided to take you in doesn't mean Australia gets special treatment. You're still a state. Governor Dundee was going to be Cross's primary opponent in the next election. His croc wrestling impressed voters, but Cross was confident that he could take him in a debate. that he could take him in a debate-mania cage match. The intel officer looked between the two for a moment before coughing slightly. For a moment before coughing softly. There's also the matter of our official embassy exchange and ceremony. Cross groaned at that. No! The UHG ceremonies are bad enough. What's this one about? If I understand correctly, you trade cans of alcohol, shotgun them, and then smash them to your forehead. Cross jumped to his feet, arms raised in the air. The alliance between America and the Libertonians. Cross jumped to his feet, arms raised in the air. The alliance between America and the Libertonians waits for no one. Actually it does. What? The president glared at the intel officer. They insist that we wait until the success of our American escorting their diplomat on a mission. Who the feck is making the President of the United States of America wait on him? That would be... Billy Bob, space trucker. Billy... Still got a twitch in my eye, still very annoying. Bad twitch, bad twitch. Billy Bob, space trucker. Billy Bob had started to calm down as the biogel seemed to settle within his system. and they'd managed to convince him to come back to the medbay for a quick exam. He was still tearing off chunks of steak with his teeth and eating them. Emily had tried some and was startled at the incredible flavor of the meat. A valuable trade commodity should be their... A valuable trade commodity should their people begin trade. The goldsmith was more interested in Billy Bob's anatomy.
This is incredible. Your species is so dense the nanites have enough materials to continually operate. Their variable programming seems to have toned down their work, but they'll last in your system far longer than most organisms. All that water in your cells is astounding.
Billy Bob just nodded and chewed the Kobe beef. Yep.
What was in the glue that you used on yourself anyway? It must have been potent to keep such moist cells stuck together.
Billy Bob shrugged. Horse hooves? No. I think that's Elmer's glue and jello. Man, when I was a kid, I loved... When I was a kid, I loved letting extra Elmer's glue dry on my fingers to peel it off, he chuckled. Ah, the old times.
Goldsmith looked to Emily, who shrugged. The space goblin continued then.
Well, either way, I'll give you another 2 liters of biogel just in case. But Billy Bob, don't take any more unless you seriously need to.
Billy Bob nodded at that. Hey, how come we've never heard of this before? This biogel seems super useful.
It's illegal outside the galactic military, but we, space goblins, don't really follow the law.
Billy Bob grinned at that. Sounds good. Hopping off the exam table, he collected the metal containers with more biogel and followed Emily out into the station, stopping near the exit of the medbay to collect his weapon.
Billy Bob, I must say that you were incredible earlier. The Borks are known for being fierce warriors, and you defeated them easily.
Billy Bob shrugged it off with a smile. Just good American fighting skills, I guess, he said as they began to walk out the station. The meat supply store was fixing their window, and Billy Bob waved at the cook, who was reading up on the PDF Billy Bob had sent over. Kill it and grill it. He was passing by what looked like some sort of lounge with various Xenos sitting around dressed in clothes. Sort of looked like lingerie, maybe. But on Xenos, so it sort of confused him. He'd never seen a place like this. Emily, what is this place?
Oh, it's a companionship and philosophy center.
What?
Lonely people or just anyone in need of some companionship come by and rent time with the employee inside. They might couple or just talk in private rooms within the establishment.
Like, space hookers. Is this space brothel?
My translator isn't quite sure that the terms match. Why did you want to couple with someone?
Billy Bob froze, his world going slightly dark. Suddenly, he wasn't on the station anymore. He was back in high school, freshman biology. Mrs. Munchausen's? That definitely says Mrs. Munchausen.
Sure.
Mrs.
Your readings.
Mrs. Munchausen's class. The class was crying and screaming as she slapped the hollow projector with her yardstick.
Pay attention, class. Until the projector registers everyone's eye focus, I will not continue. Which means that you will be here all day until we get it out of the way.
They were looking at a horrific image, projected fully before them with the label Space Gonorrhea. Finally, everyone looked back at the projector as she clicked for the next slide.
This is Space Chlamydia.
Everyone screamed again.
Space herpes.
More screams.
Space syphilis.
A few kids had to run to the trashes to... A few kids had to run to the trash cans as they puked. Mrs. Munchausen's evil sneer plastered on her face as she hit the button again.
We don't even have a name for this one yet.
Most people ran out of the room, including Billy Bob. Later on, he'd heard it was all made up, but there was no fecking way that he was taking any chances. No, I'm good. Let's get back to the ship. Emily looked a little confused as he began to push her ahead of him to keep them moving right on by. Once they were out of the main station and walking back to their ship, he smiled at the sight of the metal containing waiting. Once they were out of the main station and walking back to their ship, he smiled at the sight of a metal container waiting near his airlock. The space goblins had been nice enough to agree to give him a supply of human food to take with him, and had given him the location of several other black market stations where he'd be welcome. Excuse me.
Hey, cool. More steaks and stuff. Galactic trade is good stuff.
He picked open the airlock before realizing something.
Oh shit. Mittens is probably starving.
When he opened the inner airlock, though, he was confused as he looked around at the mess.
The fuck?
Mittens was curled up on the bed. There were empty cat food cans lying around, and one of those Bork rifles on the floor. Bork blood was smeared on the ground and on the floor in the Bork blood was smeared on the ground and on the door into the bathroom. Stepping up, he opened the bathroom and heard a cry of terror as he found a Bork with a bleeding face curled up around the space toilet.
Please don't kill me. I'm sorry. I'll do whatever you want.
The fuck are you doing in there?
I wait in here until your pet calls for food. I then quickly open a can for him and hide again. He spared my life in exchange for my ability to open those cans.
Mittens looked up from the bed as the Bork cried out and hunkered down closer to the toilet.
Please, my life is forfeit to you. I'll be your lifelong servant.
Sorry, pal, not a fan of slaves.
He picked up the Bork's weapon, handing it to him as the Bork blinked, looking confused and afraid. Billy Bob nodded and pushed the weapon at him. The Bork finally took it, but didn't get up.
Here, instead, I want you to get back on the station and get a job as a guard. You protect this station. It's your new home. You live to guard it for me, okay, pal?
Yes, thank you. You do me a great honor. I will not forget.
Here, hold on.
He set things down, putting a glass from the cupboard and pouring some biogel into it. He handed it to the Bork, who looked at it and then slowly drank the contents, seeming to struggle with the last of it, even if it was only two big Americans. Seeming to struggle with the last of it, even if it was only about two big American-sized shots of liquid. He shakily got to his feet and slowly edged out of the bathroom, trying to stay as far away from Mittens as he could in the small cabin. Once he was past the cat, he ran to the airlock. Good morning, James. Hope you're doing well.
I swear I'll protect the station with my life,
he called out as he ran out. Billy Bob just chuckled and gave Mittens a pat. The cat purred and nuzzled his hand.
What a terror you are, buddy.
What a terror you are, buddy. Who knew?
That done, he and Emily cleaned up, loaded up the supplies they'd been given, and Billy Bob got his Longhorn moving back towards the space lane. He'd need to drive straight on in his 99 to deliver the cargo. Then it was off to the galactic capital. Once he was back into FTL lane, he looked over at Emily.
Hey, Emily, I bet you didn't hear that.
Hear what? Hear what? Hear what?
She'd removed her hood and her mask, which was what she'd been doing. Which is what he'd been waiting for.
We called it silent, but deadly.
She frowned at him as she looked at him.
What are you talking about?
He just grinned wide He just grinned wide until her eyes opened in shock.
Oh,
by the vengeful God.
Billy Bob, that's disgusting.
She got up, rushing to the bathroom as he chuckled. Turning his music on, he settled in for the drive. So ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker.
Good morning, Polans. Hope you're doing well. The golden rule of immigrating from one country to another is to remember that the reason why the grass is greener on the other side is because there is bullshit over there too. So once you understand that, you're good to go. Probably want to try staying in a first world country instead of going to a third world country. Although I hear Cambodia can be nice. So can Thailand. But, you know, not quite stable. Are you from South Africa, Natalie? Just the way you're talking sounds like you're from South Africa. Good morning, Vaka. Hope you're doing well. Ah, the dream ever continues ever onwards, like all good dreams do, I suppose. Fair enough, Natalie, fair enough. Yeah, South Africa isn't a place you want to go. Especially if you have a foreign accent. Well, at least you made it through the day. That's always the hard part of working. You don't have to tell me about displeasure with South Africa. I just immigrated out of South Africa. So I know all of that. I lived it for 40 years. Fun times. So there were some guys I knew back in South Africa who went to Cambodia. They seemed to like it. But it's still unstable. So, as long as you go in there understanding that it's unstable, the government, services, electricity, all that stuff, then it's not too bad. What's the other one? It's another country. It's apparently decent to move to. As long as you understand that you're moving from a first world country to a third world country and things change. There are very big differences in the two. It's a story about the reason why humanity has progressed so fast, so quickly, and into the stars and spread out. far faster than any galactic species is because basically humanity has ADD and it gets bored easily and finds something new to do. It's written by Regal, I think. I always forget the name of the story. Philippines is okay, but again, still third world country. I mean, especially if you do anything related to drugs, avoid Asia. If you need to smoke ganja or pain or whatever, if you do that in some countries, that's a death sentence. So you have to do a lot of research. And understand that it's going to be a massive culture shock. Most of Europe has decent public transportation. So, I mean, as long as, for me, I mean, my standards are slightly different. So as long as you're not having to deal with dead bodies hanging from the electrical, what do they call it? The power lines for the trains, and the trains aren't on fire, I'm pretty good. I'll take the train. All right. On a more cheery note, let's move on to the next chapter. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob Space Trucker and is part of a series. If you're new to this series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. If you're new to this, Dr. Goldsmith shook his head slowly as he looked over the data he'd obtained from scanning Billy Bob. These Americans were crazy. Their density, their composition. He found no less than 6 chemical or elements in their makeup that would kill most species. Their levels of sodium were off the charts. You couldn't believe how much alcohol their bodies seemed ready to process. 2 or 3% alcohol solutions were more than enough to get many species drunk. But according to his research, American alcoholic beverages didn't start until something like 4 to 5%. Not only that, but they carbonated it. Sure, Libertonians like Emily had high tolerances as well, so it wasn't unique, but it was certainly... So it wasn't unique, but it was certainly rare. The fact that they had drinks of over 50% alcohol was unheard of. Oh, well, Dutch and Afrikaans sound very, very similar. Alcohol was unheard of.
He was preparing a report to send to a greater black market network that was run by his people, the Banktiers, when he was interrupted by a nurse. "Dr. Goldsmith, you need to come deal with this." He got up hurriedly, scurrying after the nurse to find a Vikesh standing in the waiting room of the clinic. His face looked scarred, but had clearly been treated by some biogel. He had a weapon in his hand and a military-grade shield belt. His bearing marked him as one of the clans who had assaulted the station, but he didn't look threatening. Instead, he looked worried.
"What's this all about?"
The Vikesh snapped to attention. "My life has been spared by the great Billy Bob. He has seen fit to save me from the third death, called Mittens. He has tasked me with serving. He has seen fit to save me from the third death bowl, Mittens. He has tasked me with serving the station as protector and guardian until the end of my days." He paused and then looked at Dr. Goldsmith as if something would happen, but Goldsmith looked around the room and then back.
"Well, what do you want from me?"
The Vikesh looked a little nervous. I was hoping that you could tell me how to do that. I was just a private. My kin have fled. The guards told me that you've been seeing the great Billy Bob. The guards told me that you'd been seeing the great Billy Bob. Dr. Goldsmith blinked for a moment.
"He didn't tell you what to do?"
"Only that I guard and protect this place with my life. I owe him a true Vikesh soul debt, and must keep it." Goldsmith blinked at that once more. Billy Bob had gotten a Vikesh to swear a soul debt and abandoned search for his battle brothers. Was there no end to the amazing things that a human could accomplish? He must truly be some sort of elite warrior and pilot of his people. He smiled up at the Vikesh.
"Yes, come with me. We'll get you set up in Central."
The Vikesh yes, James, it is going to be added to the queue. The Vikesh visibly sagged with relief as he bowed his horns in thanks.
"I will not disappoint the great Billy Bob."
Goldsmith smiled, leading the Vikesh along behind him as they walked to the Central Command station. They were cleaning up still, especially since their CEO had been killed by that evil. What had Billy Bob called it? An evil space clown? Having done a bit of research into humanities, that term seemed appropriate. But it just confused him on why humans had such terrifying children's entertainers. Either way, the four-armed insectoid ants, who the Bentons hired as guards, fluttered a little in the presence of a Vikesh, clutching their energy weapons tight. But Goldsmith waved them off and rode the elevator up to his new charge. As he stepped out into the command center, he could see the remaining board of operators had all assembled to fill in positions on the station left by the dead kin. But they weren't in a frenzy vote. But they weren't in the frenzy vote at the moment. They were huddled around a communications terminal.
"What's going on?"
he asked as he approached. "Bad news, Doctor. The Galactic Secret Service is here."
"What? The crustaceans? Why?"
"They've issued a level 1 warrant for the arrest of the terrorist they think is on our station."
"Well, just hand them over. We don't want trouble with them."
"That's the problem. They don't want a normal client. Or even one of our own." Goldsmith gulped, fearing he knew what was next. But he had to ask.
"Then, who do they want?"
"They've ordered the arrest and capture of Billy Bob, space trucker." Billy Bob, space trucker.
Space truck.
There was a little chime in the cabin as Billy Bob looked at his calendar and laughed. Oh crap, look at that. It's Arkansas Day. Arcanis Day? Arcanis Day. It's Arcanis Day, Emily. Grab me a beer. Gotta celebrate. Emily arched a brow but walked back to the fridge, returning with 2 beers. Billy Bob cracked his open and laughed, lifting it up as she said, Humanity! Feck yeah! Then he began to drink. Emily, on the other hand, just chuckled and quickly opened a tap while biting the side of the can to snurp it dry. What's this about? She asked after crushing the can on her skull. Oh, it's Arcanis Day back on Earth. Some old human leader rallied a bunch of people around and... Oh, it's Arcanis Day back on Earth. Some old human leader rallied a bunch of people around that cry as we started our first steps into colonizing our solar system, he nodded. You celebrate with a drink? Well, I gotta keep driving. Normally we'd celebrate it by getting drunk. What about other human holidays? The next one we dress up, eat candy and get drunk. Then Vets Day, where we celebrate soldiers by drinking and grilling stuff. After that we get together with family, have a feast and get drunk. After that, we get together with family again, exchange presents, and, get drunk. Then it's getting drunk to celebrate a new year. Then, we get drunk with people we want to feck and eat chocolate. Then we grill meat and get drunk to celebrate the presidents. Oh, crap. Then it's a week of getting drunk because of voodoo in New Orleans and lots of tits for that one. Then we get drunk because of Ireland. Then we get up early and have a nice brunch, and then get the little... brunch and get just a little bit drunk while eating chocolate eggs. He nodded for a moment as he looked thoughtful, trying to remember everything. Then we get drunk Mexican style because, for some reason. Because we want to mostly, something. Because we want to mostly. Something about France, maybe. Then we have Memorial's Day, where we remember those who fought and died for us. More serious, but drinking is more... Drinking is often involved. Then we have a day celebrating how awesome our flag is. Drinking not required, but again, often involved. He perked up and looked even more excited. Oh, and then there's the biggest, best day of them all, Independence Day. We explode shit, drink, grill meat, and generally spend the week in a blur of celebration. He rubbed his chin. Is that it? No. We also have a day to celebrate working by not working, and instead of getting drunk and grilling stuff. He nodded softly. He nodded slowly. I think that's all of them. You get drunk for all of the holidays? Yeah, mostly. Of course, I'm leaving out the sports-related holidays, because not everyone gets involved in those. We used to have one to celebrate the guy who found America, but turns out, while awesome in some senses, he was an arsehole in others. So we decided to drop it in favor of National Pizza Day, which is pretty awesome, too, if you ask me. Emily blinked, having no idea just how much the Americans apparently drank. While her people had high tolerance overall, if they drank that much, their bodies wouldn't be able to handle it. Maybe Earth years were more spread out. She'd have to look into it. Overall, the trip with Billy Bob heading to his cargo delivery planet was pretty smooth once they left the station. Emily would sleep every few hours, and Billy Bob would listen to his music. Then, when he needed to sleep, he'd pull off, take a nap, and she'd listen to music, and then switch off again. Once he was up, and they were just 4 hours from the planet, she had been listening to quite a bit of human music. So, this person was a monarch or popular? No, he's the king of pop. Isn't like an official title. He was just a great musician and dancer. He wasn't even royalty. We used the term now and then. Before him was Elvis. He wasn't a monarch either. No, he was another great musician. Farted himself to death one day, I think. Emily blinked at that. And this other one? What, Jackson? We don't know. What do you mean? Decades ago, someone wiped out all the records about his life after the year of 1990. Probably died, and that...
Probably died and they didn't like how it ended or something. I don't know.
So, were they ruled over by this, Pope of Parody?
Who? Oh, Weird Al. No. Again, not a real title. Just a funny guy and another great musician.
Why do you keep giving such titles to musicians?
We like them? I don't know. We give titles to everyone we think deserves one. They don't mean anything, just sort of, like... Look, we like titles, okay?
She shrugged it off then, and figured that she'd just have to understand Americans better. The rest of the trip to NR3 was uneventful. They found the quiet little agri world, and Billy Bob brought his longhorn down into the planet's atmosphere. Emily pulled her mask and hood back on to keep people from recognizing the Libertonian, but the galaxy wasn't aware they needed to be afraid of Americans yet, so Billy Bob was all right. They landed in a clearing he'd been guided to on his contract, but they didn't see signs of a town or many buildings. Either way, the planet was only half normal Earth, so he began to unload the crates from the Longhorn with minimal effort. It was a typical agri-world. No evolved natural animals bigger than a pinky. No evolved natural animals bigger than his pinky. Just plants. Lots and lots of plants. The colony was supposed to be near a mountain with some forested area, and then massive rolling plains of weeds. Or maybe they weren't actually weeds, but they looked like space weeds to him.
Are you sure you should unload them? You don't know if they're still alive?
Emily asked as he started to move the crates, even though they hadn't contacted the colonists. Colonists.
I was paid to deliver the scrap to the spot. Not my fault if they're too dead to collect.
He grunted as he was about half done with unloading. Emily sat on top of a pile of crates, looking around the area while Billy Bob finished. When the last box was out, he smiled and brushed off his hands. Well, now to go find them.
I think I see smoke in some sort that way, she said, pointing towards the base of the nearby hills.
They walked through the trees, and Billy Bob noticed he didn't hear any birds or insects, which seemed wrong. To a human, that meant something evil or big and hungry was close. To a human, that meant something evil or big and hungry was close. But some agri-worlds just didn't have those sorts of animals. They came out of the trees in a clearing of what looked like basic tents and low-level shelters. The creatures were humanoid and had shaggy hair, with long snouts ending with what looked like unkempt bears. The creatures were humanoid and had shaggy hair, with long snouts ending in what looked like unkempt bears. They were wearing very basic clothes, and in general looked nothing like the colonists he was used to. They had long eyes. They had long eyes on stalks that turned his way as he approached.
I don't like this. Their eyes are so red, and this place smells.
Oh, you're not familiar with the whole gyms. They're very peaceful herbivores. Live with nature, very little impact and all that.
Billy Bob growled, "Space hippies."
He pointed at one where walking towards.
You! I delivered your shit. Pay me so I can get away from your jobless dirty. Pay me so I can get away from your jobless dirty freaks.
Whoa, man, that's some really harsh language, man. You're harshing my buzz. Billy Bob growled at the creature as it scurried away.
Just go see like the peace, brother. Just
go see like the peace, mother and father. Billy Bob growled at the creature as it scurried away. Just go see like the peace, mother and father in the cave. Billy Bob glared at the space hippie and walked towards the cave he saw past the settlement. He wanted to stomp, but in this gravity he'd go flying. Once they were inside, he saw two older, fatter space hippies who smelled worse than the rest.
Oh, you're the one who brought our cargo. Thank you so much.
May the stupid space god... May the stupid hippie space god bless you.
Like your aura's so kind.
Yeah, no, where's my payment?
What, all right.
The slightly less fat but smaller of the two, he couldn't tell the males from the females apart, led him deeper into the cave. He saw the first sign of civilization, as they had some sort of metal cage around a... He looked at it closely. It looked like some sort of six-legged space fox, with two sets of ears the size of a German shepherd. It had a bright orange coat with black and along the feet and ears. He already had space foxes in his translator. Ah, crap. Space cat dog. That would work. The thing looked up. That thing would work. The thing looked... That would work. The thing looked depressed. Whoa, man, this is a voice that I don't get to use very often. That would work.
This is like our space cat dog. This is like our space cat dog. We brought it here to let it live a clean, vegetarian lifestyle with us.
But space cat dogs are carnivores, Emily said from behind him.
We think we can break them from that bad habit, man,
said the space hippie. The space hippie said, You people make me sick, Billy Bob growled, but he was here to get paid. The space hippie shrugged and rummaged through a box in the back before pulling out a pink crystal inlaid with some sort of wreath of vines. Turning, it handed it to Billy Bob. The fuck is this?
That's your payment. It gives you lifelong access to any space hippie planet, where you're free to share in our food and shelter.
Billy Bob twitched a little, but Emily leaned in behind him, whispering, Billy Bob, that space cat dog is incredibly rare and valuable. It's worth at least 10 million credits on the open market, more to the right buyer. The right buyer.
My compatriot forgot something in the ship. I'll just stay here with you and your natural bounty.
He turned, giving Emily a light push.
I'll see you back in this ship. I'll see you back in the ship, Emily. Be right behind you.
The diplomat was a bit confused, but after a moment of hesitation, turned and began to walk out of the colony. She was almost to the Longhorn when she heard shouting. Turning, she saw Billy Bob with the carnivore in his arm, running towards her in long bounding strides in a low gravity.
Emily, get on the ship. We gotta fucking book it. These space hippies befriended some sort of rock creatures. Go, 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 go!
So,
go reading.
And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker.
Dum, dum, dum. Yeah, very much.
You're being a buzzkill, man. Why are you so strong, man? You need to be one with the universe.
Big stretch. Okay. Yes, yes.
Being totally bogus, man. My aura's just not vibing with your attitude, man. You need to just chill, man.
Always remember, was it Finding Nemo was like,
First we were like, whoa, and then we're like, whoa, and then you were like, whoa, man.
Billy Bob? Not Billy Bob. Billy Bob. Yeah. Billy Bob 14. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob Space Trucker and is part of the series. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 14. The crustaceans had long been the secret service of the galactic government. Compared with most species, they were fierce warriors and ambush predators. Their hunter-killer castes could pounce on a target and sink back into the void with speed and accuracy that was legendary. They very seldom failed at a mission. This weighed heavily on Bleebob, who had lost his hunter-killer caste to a single ugly little creature. His mandibles quivered with anger at the thought while he settled into the shadows, watching the briefing caste leader Cleroy was giving.
This creature, known as an American, is a subspecies of the greater human population. While we need to do proper analysis of all humans, what we've learned about these Americans is worrisome. Their body structure appears to be incredibly dense, as on par with super heavy gravity creatures. Where they do not possess a superior exoskeleton like ourselves, their internal bone structure appears to be supplemented with incredibly dense layers of muscle.
Good morning, Alex. Welcome back.
Considering they ingest capsaicin and large amounts of caffeine in drink they refer to as coffee, we can only assume they're highly poisonous as well as venomous.
As the hunter-killers around the shadowy chamber clicked and chittered, Cleroy used his clickers to signal silence.
They do not possess claws of any kind, and their mandibles is insufficient for biting. But do not underestimate it. It makes up for this by being durable and strong. They also appear to be able to calculate complex firing equations in their head and fire ballistic weapons accurately while moving.
This sent a hiss of surprise through the ranks. There were outbursts of disbelief at the information, but Cleroy tapped on his holo display before him. The hunter-killers went quiet as they watched the security footage. Most had heard of this victory of the squad.
The hunter-killers. The hunter-killers went quiet as they watched the security footage. Most had heard of his victory of the squad on Fellas, but the crustaceans were superior to them in nearly every way, and this did not concern them. The Vikesh, however, were strong combatants and fierce warriors, who gave them challenge. Now they were watching this lone American take on and defeat an entire clan of battle brothers on his own. What are those weapons it's using? Ballistic weapons. Impossible. Ballistic weapons that small. How does he control them? I've never seen a ballistic weapon mounted on less than an armor crawler. I assure you he is wielding ballistic weapons. One seems to be focused on a single accurate high-impact shots. The other disperses smaller rounds in a much wider area. He also has some sort of fire-breathing method we don't understand. His use of fire goes beyond that as well. So this species must have high thermal tolerance. The crustaceans chittered and stirred at the news. Their hydrating mucus was kept. The crustaceans chittered and stirred as the crustaceans chittered and stirred at the news. Their hydrating mucus was what kept them operational outside of the water. If their enemy had some special method of bringing fire wherever he went, it did not bode well for them. They're waiting for the black market station to surrender. Then we'll proceed to capture the targets, Leroy continued. Bleebob ticked in annoyance at the idea. If he found them first, they would be captured. That's what. If he found them first, they wouldn't be captured, that was for sure. He'd rip them limb from limb. Den's body be damned, no one blinded two of his eyes and survived. Leroy was about to continue when Juvenile Gesh rushed into the room. Cast leader, the station sent us a message. Good. Cast leader, the station has sent us a message. Good. They have surrendered? No. They say that they don't know who we're talking about. What? His ship is docked with them. We just checked, Cast leader. It isn't. Leroy hissed out and tapped on the hollow projector to bring up a real-time projection of the station. He scanned the docked ships and hissed once more. Impossible! He just engaged in prolonged combat. He should need at least 10 solar cycles to recover torso wounds like he suffered. Where did he go? Leroy ticked and hissed in frustration. This American is incredible. His endurance and pain tolerance must be unheard of. Likely the most elite of their commandos. Spread the word amongst the casts. There is no greater threat to the peace of the galaxy than Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Billy Bob was currently bobbing his head while driving his rig, music pouring out of the speakers. And I've been taking care of business every day, taking care of business every way. Emily was in the co-pilot seat studying a map of their route heading deeper into the core wood towards the capital. Billy Bob, Billy Bob, the work songs your people come up with are rather incredible. Are the ones you have on file simply new takes on ancient farm songs? What? No, some, maybe. I don't think so. We just like music. And there's other stuff out there. I just like work songs. Good for trucking too. We sing about work and love and loss and, stuff. Well, most of us don't sing. We listen to other people who can sing. Some songs are a bit funny, even if they're good. Here. He scrolled through his implant and selected a new track. The music began, and he started bobbing his head again. As the singing started and he grinned, Emily frowned a little as she listened to the lyrics until she jumped a little as Billy Bob sang the chorus. Won't you give me more? Won't you give me 3 steps? Oh, give me 3 steps, mister. Give me 3 steps door to door. Then Billy Bob bit his lower lip and rocked the air guitar as hard as he could for a few seconds before grabbing the controls of the ship again. It's a song about adultery and murder. Sorta.
he said with a laugh. This guy in the song isn't parenting, he's tough.
It's a song about adultery and murder.
Sorta, he said with a laugh. The guy in the song isn't even pretending he's tough or anything. He's running for his life. Sometimes you step up and sometimes you get the feck out. Someone's got a 44 in your face, there's no shame in bugging out. One of my favorite bands. They have this song. He paused and got a faraway look in his eyes. I'll save that song for something special.
How is it that humans have so many genres of music from such a short period of time? I've said it before, but most species have one general trend to their music. You've got several. As far as I can tell, you change it every one of your decades.
Oh, and don't forget, I've mostly been giving you rock. I also have country, and a bit of techno, but after those scroll dogs... And a bit of techno. I also have country, and a bit of techno, but after those scroll logs messed up your... I also have country, and a bit of techno, but after those scroll logs messed you up, I figured you wouldn't like it.
She frowned at that. Wait, you've made music that sounds like a direct audio assault?
Yes, maybe. Does it sound like that? It doesn't sound like that to us.
Emily tried to process that for a moment, remembering the awful pain and nausea she felt when those creatures let forth the hideous sound. And humans had music like that. Perhaps the density made them less susceptible. It does pose a problem, however, if they figure out how to weaponize it.
So, how far is it to the next black market station? We need to buy supplies for our new pet,
Billy Bob said, which brought her back to reality. New pet? You don't mean the space cat dog, do you?
Yeah, I mean, we just set him up in a crate in the back and start settling in, right? He needs toys and a proper bed and stuff.
That's just an infant, you realize. It's not fully grown.
What? That thing's a good size for an earth animal, it sort of looks like. How big does it get?
Emily brought up an extranet from the co-pilot's chair and scanned through it for a minute before finding him. Emily brought up the extranet from the co-pilot's chair and scanned through it for a minute to find him a picture.
What? That thing's a frigging horse! I could ride it!
I suppose. It's from a relatively high-gravity planet. It can support several 100 pounds and is often used as a pack animal, so sure. But why would you? We're on a spaceship traveling faster than light.
Yeah, so I've got a pet six-legged fox thing that I can ride. How awesome is that?
You could sell it for 1 million credits.
You're gonna pay me a few billion. The fact do I need another million for?
Emily paused at that and thought it over. He had a fair point. She hadn't transferred any funds to him so far, but the contract they had in place from their first encounter seemed to be enough for him. But it's not practical.
Yeah, well, Americans aren't super big on practical sometimes. I'ma keep it. Also, I gotta change the name. Fox, horse, hawks, no, force, no, shit. Come on, Billy Bob. Gotta think up a better name.
Emily stared at him as he tried to rack his brain for a better idea.
Feck it, I'll just think up a personal name. He's a pet after all.
Emily waited for him to follow it up with a name, but he just blinked and cursed.
Shit, I gotta think this one over. I was about to say that he's got black feet, so I could call him... I was about to say that he's got black feet, so I looks like he was wearing mittens, but, well, that name's taken.
He glanced over his shoulder at the cat, and then he looked at Emily. And then he looked at Emily.
What do you guys use for pet names?
Some people give them normal names. Some seem to do what you do, trying to assign them a name based on looks.
Shit. If he was a bird, I'd call him Leonard.
He's not, so he went quiet again.
I'll figure it out once you buy him some toys, and I take time to play with him.
Emily just shrugged. It really upsets you that those space hippies were trying to feed him veggies, didn't it?
Fuck yeah, it did. It's an animal. You don't try and feed a carnivore fruits and veggies, 'cause you wish he didn't eat meat. You feed him meat and fucking get over it. I wouldn't try to stuff a stake down the throat of one of those space hippies, damn it.
There was a pause as they were both quiet until the same moment he tilted his head and said,
I probably would.
while she said, You probably would.
Well, that's different. Sort of. Whatever.
He grumbled a little, while Emily just shrugged it off. They were only an hour from the next Black Market Space Goblin station, and spent the time listening to music. Billy Bob could... Billy Bob would every so often shout a name and then shake his head right after. He had to make this name count. Once they reached the station, they quickly docked, and Billy Bob looked over his weapons locker.
Should I suit up?
I don't think you need to. We're in about as good a standing with the space goblins as we can get. We're in about as good a standing with the space goblins as we can get. He nodded at that, but did take his M1911 just in case. Exiting the ship, they walked down the docking arm. No bloodstains, no flickering lights, just a few space ants standing around, scanning implants and waving people on as they entered. Billy Bob and Emily were approved quickly and waved on into the main hub. The sounds of a myriad of species buying, selling, and trading black and grey market goods filled their ears as they stepped out into the busy street like halls. Emily was looking around for some sign of a vendor who dealt with exotic animals, but Billy Bob gasped and ran over towards the street vendor. Behind the stall was a grizzled old one-eyed space goblin who glanced up at his customer.
Is that ice cream?
The space goblin looked down at his cart. In front of him was an array of colourful-looking cold moushes. Is it what?
Fucking ice cream, man. Frozen sugar and dairy.
What? No. Billy Bob looked crestfallen. It's ice with sugar and flavouring. But I warn ye, this is could. But I warn ye, that's cold. But I warn ye, this cold could be for the faint of heart. It is kept at freezing temperatures, and is loaded with enough sugar to stun many species. Many speak of the horrifying pains known as... Many speak of the horrifying pains Many speak of the horrifying pain known only as... The space goblin whispered, brain freeze. Billy Bob slapped down a credit cube and then grabbed what he thought was a serving cup. Dragging it through the blue frozen slurry, he pulled it up to his mouth and dumped a large chunk of it into his mouth. He shivered a little as the old space goblin stared at him in shock. That's a Titan-sized travel container. It's meant to feed 10 at a time. Billy Bob wasn't listening. He was turning and calling out,
Emily, slushies!
Before tilting his head back and downing more of the frozen treat. Looking over, she saw him and the shocked vendor before softly sighing and wondering what trouble he was causing now. And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Ice cream, ice cream.
Okay.
Ooh, big stretch. Crap.
Yeah.
Fire rock. Fire rock works. $16. 15. I'm doing well, Cosmic Cake. How are you doing? Hope you're having a fantastic day. Or as fantastic as one can. Thank you for the super chat. Yarg! Another balloon for the treasure chest. I'm gonna have to dig it up and add it to there, but it is worth it. Yarg! Indeed, it has been, Cosmic. It has been. Thank you very much, Postmatic, for the $2 yarg. Yarg! Oh, no, that's the wrong button. Well, want that, and that. Okay. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TVOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob's Space Trucker, and is part of a series. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Admiral Winters. Chapter 15. Admiral Winters sipped at a cup of coffee as she stood on the bridge of the USS Enterprise, the largest, newest Freedom-class supercarrier built in the shipyards back home on Earth. The name amused her a little. American vessels had shared the name throughout history, and she knew that before humanity had expanded into the solar system, there had been a show about a spaceship with the same name. It was supposed to explore the galaxy in peace or some such bullshit. Her Enterprise did not have any such space hippie missions. It was a ship of war. 300 Gladiator-class fighter bombers and 1,500 support crew, 20 Armadillo-class assault ships to deliver 2,000 angry U.S. Space Marines upon target, 24 Sucker Punch-class main armament railguns, 68 brass knuckle close claw 24 Sucker Punch class main armament railguns, 68 brass knuckle close, 24 Sucker Punch class main cannons, 24 Sucker Punch class main armament railguns, 68 brass knuckle class close range Vulcan cannons, 200 Liberation class 15 megaton yield nuclear missiles, 6,000 Peacekeeper class conventional cruise missiles, 4 nuclear reactors, 3 movie theaters, 6 swimming pools, 1 full craft sports facility including football and baseball fields, the largest skip drive ever made, and a personal favorite, 1 catapult running the length of the ship. The Enterprise could fit an asteroid up to 100 feet in wide. The Enterprise could fit an asteroid up to 100 feet wide into the special launch chamber and fling a rock at Xeno Colony at around 85,000 miles per hour, absolutely guaranteeing that they'd have a bad day. Flanking the Enterprise were her sister ships, the USS Constitution and the USS Constitution and the USS Second Amendment. They were earlier generation Federation-class supercarriers, lacking the catapult, and in general a little smaller but still heavy hitters. Then, around 3 supercarriers with 15 assassin-class hunters. Then around the 3 supercarriers with 15 assassin-class hunter-killers,
that employed the finest in human-engineered stealth systems and skip drives. They bounced across the very fabric of reality and slammed a nuclear torpedo into a Xeno capital ship, and then bug out before anyone knew where they were. At the moment, the carrier group was sitting out in deep space. This was a tactic only humans ever employed. The sheer, vast nothingness that waited in deep space drove every other species insane pretty quickly. Humans just stared into the black and waited for the call to war. The skip drives they'd invented bent reality around the ship, another tactic that drove another species insane, and would let them charge into a system free of FTL gates, unleash hell, and skip out before any capital ship fleets could respond. The human government denied any knowledge or involvement in the American supercarrier program, but in reality each one was a testament to human ingenuity and drive. The hulls might be assembled in the US, but materials and parts came from across all of human space, not to mention all of the freshly minted citizens who crewed the ship, having come from every corner of Earth and beyond. Humans had invented plausible deniability, and so as long as the UHC claimed the Americans were a subspecies who they had no control over, the neighboring Xeno nations were forced to fight an enemy with no extrasolar colonies, and the most heavily defended homeworld in known space. An enemy who waited in deep space just to fuck up someone's day. Admiral Winters smiled as she kept sipping her coffee, thinking about how much she loved her job. Then her reprieve was interrupted by her comms officer. "Sir, we have gotten word. Intel reports a new Xeno species is ramping up for war with humanity as a whole. They're intercepted mobilizing orders and fleet movements." Winters frowned for a moment. "Humanity as a whole, just not us. Not us. Humanity as a whole, not just us." "That is correct, sir. They're known as the Crustaceans. Apparently they serve the Galactic Secret Police." That caught her interest. "We're playing with the big boys, are we? What happened?" We're playing with the big boys, are we? What happened?" "We pissed them off, sir. We pissed them off, I guess, sir." Winters chuckled at that. "Military strength estimates? Biggest fleet that we've ever had to deal with. They're supposed to be excellent commandos as well." Winters just chuckled at that. "They've never met a pissed-off Marine with a jetpack. Very well. The battle horn has been sounded and America ramps up for war. Find their deepest, most secure system. I want to jump up close as possible, so when war is officially declared, we can come out swinging." "Yes, sir." "Also direct orders from the President himself. He says this is all about some human who started defending some other Xenos diplomat. We're supposed to send a contingent of commandos to escort him to his mission." We're supposed to send the contingent of commanders to escort him on his mission. One American calls the Galactic War outstanding. What's this fine American go by? His name is Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Billy Bob, Space Trucker. Emily had finally torn Billy Bob away from the slushies he'd been drowning. Apparently, he missed the frozen sugar as much as he'd been missing real meat. They needed to go shopping for their new pet, which he had yet to name. Their pet. The pair of them got odd looks from most of the Xenos around the station, even amongst the strange and varied populations of the galaxy. Humans and Libertonians looked out of place. Emily guided them through the black market station to a vendor who dealt with rare and exotic creatures, hoping to find what they'd need. From the outside, the store looked far more secure than most of the ones around it. There were bars in the windows, and it used tinted glass to keep the interior out of sight of most shoppers. But when they stepped inside, Billy Bob chuckled softly. Why do all pet stalls smell the same? There were cages along the wall, some aquariums, and those types of enclosures you used for lizards, but Billy Bob couldn't remember what they were called. Terrariums, maybe? Most of the creatures seemed to be quiet, aside from the squawking calling of a few here and there. Looking around, he saw a few creatures wearing exosuits that looked similar to the galactic police he'd run from a number of occasions, but he wasn't sure if they were the same species or not. Emily walked towards the center to talk with the owner while Billy Bob wandered around. He found a glass enclosure with a pink-furred monkey-looking thing with an extra arm coming out of its back. The space monkey looked over at him and stuck out its tongue. And stuck its tongue out. So Billy Bob returned the gesture. That seemed to get its attention. Then it made a face and Billy Bob imitated it. That seemed to piss it off. Emily approached the bankier who ran the shop and started to talk with him, unaware of what Billy Bob was doing. Hello there. We recently came into the acquisition of a Venera Explains runner, and we're wondering if you might have some supplies that you could sell us for it. A Venera Explain runner? That's a carnivore, you know. I'm aware. Me and my companion are omnivores, so it's not an issue. Well, if you're okay with giving it meat on a regular basis, it's fine. What were you looking to buy?
20, I think. Yashimisha? I think it's 34 total. Yamashisha, sorry.
Cup of coffee, and she stood on the bridge of the any such the Enterprise could fit. At the moment, the carrier, not to mention all an enemy analyzing all Winter's Brown, who started defending some other creatures, walked towards the center. Okay with giving it meat on a regular enclosure with a pink fur. The pair of them got odd looks from most. Billy Bob. Emily had finally torn Billy Bob away from the slushies he'd been drowning. Emily had finally torn Billy Bob away from the slushies he'd been drowning. Emily had finally torn Billy Bob away from the slushies he'd been drowning. Emily finally tore Billy Bob away from the slushies he'd been downing. Emily finally tore Billy Bob away from the slushies he'd been downing. Apparently he'd been downing. Apparently, he missed the frozen.
There we go. Corrected.
What were you looking? What were?
Emily looked over her shoulder to ask Billy Bob and saw him making faces at a glass cage. Billy Bob. He looked over as something brown slapped against the glass, and he jerked back for a moment. Ha! Totally a space monkey. He left the raging monkey in a box and walked up. What's up? What did you want to buy for our space cat dog? He frowned as he thought about how much he needed a better name for it. You know, like a bed and toys and stuff. Toys? For a space cat dog? Toys. Toys for a space cat dog, the space goblin asked. It's from a high-gravity planet, you know. It's very strong. I wouldn't advise trying to play with it. Don't worry about it. My fine space goblin, I'm from a super heavy gravity planet. The space goblin blinked. What did you just call me? My translator must be glitching out. Don't worry about it. So you get what we want. Oh, and like shampoo and stuff. I'm sure we gotta give it a bath now and then. Do you plan on washing a space cat dog by hand? Yeah, sure, why not? Billy Bob smiled as he shop owed him. Billy Bob smiled as the shop owner opened and closed his mouth a few times before shrugging. Clearly, he was confused. But they were offering to buy from him, so he couldn't complain too much. He started to bring out items for them to look at when Billy Bob interrupted him. I should have thought of this back on the planet, but do you have any sticks for sale? Any what? Sticks, branches, something for me to throw so that he can pick it up and bring it back. Both Emily and the shop owner stared at him.
What? Doesn't anyone do that? Doesn't... What?
What? Doesn't anyone do that? Play fetch with animals?
No. You're the only species I know of that can accurately throw things, Emily said as she shrugged. Whatever. I'll see what we've got.
They spent a good half an hour selecting a variety of toys Billy Bob insisted on. A large soft bed for when it got bigger, and despite all of Emily's insistence that it was a bad idea, Billy Bob bought a large bone like a chew toy he insisted that he could throw as a stick. When it came time to pay, Billy Bob stared at the bill and then looked up at Emily with his best impression of big puppy dog eyes. With his best impression of big puppy eyes. Uptoot, uptoot. Eyes.
Why are you staring at me like that?
Come on, I can't pay for all of this.
You should have thought about that before this...
She stopped and looked at the shop owner.
Before picking up a new pet on that planet.
Oh, come on, you know I can't sell it. It's too awesome, please. I'll pay you back.
When? Oh, you mean after I pay you?
Yeah, just garnish my wages.
My translator. Never mind, I think I get what you mean. Keeping one of those as a pet is going to be expensive, you know.
Oh, come on, please. Please.
Emily sighed and set her galactic trade cube on the counter. Yes, thank you so much. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, Emily. You're the best.
He leaned in to hug her, and she quickly gasped out as he picked her up and bear hug.
Billy Bob, strength, was all she could wheeze out before he quickly stopped and set her back down. Shit. Sorry. You okay?
The diplomat groaned a little as she shook her arms, and then her wings fluttered for a moment. Yeah, but you nearly crushed me.
It crushed. Very South African way of saying it.
But you nearly crushed me.
Sorry, cultural thing. I'll be more careful in the future. Just a high five.
He lifted his hand, and she snapped her palm against it like she'd shown her.
Like he'd shown her. Heck yeah, we'll make an American out of you yet. Have this stuff delivered to my ship, he said to the space goblin, who'd watched the entire exchange in silent confusion.
It'll take a bit of time to assemble it all for you. Give me some time.
Billy Bob waved a hand. Sure.
They walked out the station and backed into the flow of traffic. Xenos all around, buying and selling, chatting, arguing, yelling advertisements. Billy Bob and Emily glanced around and looked up at her. Billy Bob looked up. Billy Bob and Emily glanced around, and he looked at her. Billy Bob and Emily glanced around, and he looked up at her.
Where to from here, boss?
She glanced down at her short companion, and then back up and around. Shall we find a place to sit and eat for a while?
Sounds like a plan.
She guided them through the crowds of people to a restaurant that served meat, and after Billy Bob made a bit of a scene by picking up the ergonomic chair and snapping it in half, so that he could restack it into a comfortable human chair, they sat down. Billy Bob saw one of the familiar-looking space frogs walk up to take their order and ask for whatever they had with caffeine in it, then looked at Emily.
How come I keep seeing the space frogs in restaurants?
The space frogs? Oh, they have strict cultural codes regarding hospitality. They won't poison you, for one, and in general tend to run places like this.
Well, that's good to know, but the last few seemed disgusted when we ordered meat.
Ah, the ones on stations like this are from their low class. They have to scavenge more and at times have to eat whatever they can. I don't think they can handle meat, but they better understand the needs of some species have. I don't think... I don't think that they can handle meat, but they better understand the needs some species have than their upper class.
We're scavengers too. I mean, not anymore with cuts. not any, Not anymore with Costco and shit. But we used to be. Had to work our way up the food chain, so we just ate all kinds of crap. How about you?
She shook her head. No, we were always at the top. We did have a common ancestor that was a pure carnivore, but they weren't as successful because it's harder to get nothing but meat. We could survive eating berries and plants. We always had our top picks, though. Most scavengers don't develop the intelligence your species has shown, though. He chuckled at that.
Well, some of my species thinks it's a cosmic joke that we did survive this long. We have a horrific tendency to risk death out of curiosity, even on a large scale. Before we detonated our first atomic bomb, some scientists thought that it would set our atmosphere on fire and kill off the whole planet, or something like that. We did it anyway. Then there was that big collider thing. What was it called? The Large Hairy Collider? I forgot. What did it do? Oh, it was a particle accelerator. We'd slam atoms, or I guess particles, against each other with huge speeds to learn more about them. And, a few decades after we made it to our moon, we made this really big one that created little black holes. Some people thought that they'd grow out of control and devour our planet.
Emily was silent in shock, but with her mask on, he couldn't see her mouth hanging open. You did what?
They were really small, and hey, honestly, they didn't do that. We still exist.
Your species makes little black holes?
Yeah?
Billy Bob glanced around, now a little nervous about the conversation.
That isn't normal.
No, it is forbidden by galactic government. It's insanely dangerous.
Oh, well, messing around with that stuff is how we came... Well, messing around with that stuff is how we came up with the skip tribes. I guess that's why no one else has them.
You mentioned those before. What are they?
Well, I'm not a scientist, but the basics is that they sort of feck up reality. And you bounce your ship across something else, another dimension or whatever, and end up somewhere else.
She blinked at that. You alter reality. What's it like?
For the most part, it's black, but you see strange colors on the very edge of your vision, and you'd swear someone is whispering to you.
You subject yourself to that?
Yeah. You learn to tune it out after a jump or two. The biggest threat is boredom.
Let me get this straight. You've developed a device that alters the very fabric of reality somehow and makes you bounce across what you think is another dimension and see colors and hear something whispered to you. And you just tune it out, which means you're mostly bored.
Yeah.
She shook her head slowly at that. Humans are insane, or so perfectly sane they appear insane. He shrugged at that. Then he gasped and pointed over his shoulder. Then he gasped and pointed over her shoulder out the window.
That's a disco ball.
She turned to look over her shoulder, seeing the shop across the way that had a spinning, sparkling orb inside. Oh, that's a cultural dance center. They have artifacts from pre-space flight civilizations and their various dances. They hold competitions and stuff to see if people can imitate the barbaric dancing for prizes. Billy Bob was out of his seat, rushing out of the restaurant. Billy Bob, get back here. We need to order. Billy Bob. Emily cursed under her breath and quickly waved to the waiter to explain before rushing after her companion. When she crossed the street, he was walking back with a big smile.
Got myself signed up for the tournament tonight. Guess he's got 2 thumbs and is an authority on barbaric pre-space fight dance.
He pointed at his face with his thumbs.
This guy!
And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob Space Trucker.
Up-dooty-doot. Oh, Big stretch. Big stretch.
Alrighty, that's 3 hours of stream, 14,000 words of narration, 6 chapters, 1, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 chapters. So, that is going to be me for the day. Oh, good morning, Phoenix. Yes, I'll hydrate soon. We've ended the stream. Well, we're going to be ending the stream now. Thank you all for popping past. It is very much appreciated. I know in this day and age where your attention is being dragged in every which way, that spending your time with me is a treasured thing. So thank you very much. I will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. 9 a.m. plus 1 GMT. And we'll do this all again tomorrow. I hope you all have a fantastic one. A nice day at work, calm and relaxed and boring, or a fantastic day off, whatever it may be for you.